Wendy Allnock, and I'm going to be doing a Bible journaling page for 9/11. I thought Lady Liberty would be a good choice for a day like this. And I thought about the Emma Lazarus poem, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, templess tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door." And it reminded me of Luke 4, "The Spirit of the Lord is on me because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners, recovery of sight for the blind, to set the oppressed free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." There's some real connections between those two. If you would like to make a Lady Liberty page in your Bible and use this verse or any other verse in your Bible, there's a JPEG that you can get in the description down below. I'll put the link to it there so that you can download it for yourself. Mine is set up so that the book is down below where the verse is, and my words are up there on the top, and then I can put this page underneath so that I can trace through and see the lines. If I had a background painted on there first, I wouldn't really be able to see very much through it and have to use a different technique for tracing the image on here, but I can do it with just the plain Bible paper and see through. Recently, the Poor Statue of Liberty poem was disparaged, and I think that's what got my attention because it just didn't seem right. And then when I realized the connections between this verse and what Jesus promised, that he didn't require that we be all perfect. He said, I'm going to preach good news to the poor, to those in prison. I'm going to go to the messed up ones among you, and I'm going to bring you the good news. And that is really what the Emma Lazarus poem is all about as well. So that's what I thought would work here. Now I can't see real well underneath of where my words are. It's a little harder to see. So I'm just kind of peeking so I can see where that square book is. I'm not going to put a lot of detail in that because it's under the words. I just want to have the general shape there when I go to paint it. The words I'm going to trace on here, and I'm using the lines on my Bible and using like 2 lines for the height of my letters and that sort of thing. And I use that a lot when I'm doing my lettering, just to figure out what the rhythm would be. There's some words that will be smaller and use just the height of 2 lines. Some of them will be using, more spaces, that sort of thing. But I choose my words that are bigger based on what I think is most important in the verse and what words you want to call out. So if there's particular words, make those larger or make them in brighter colors. And then you can also simplify as much as possible. So when this is all done, you'll see that I've simplified the verse. I'm not using every single word in it because it's a very long verse. For my watercoloring, I'm using my Daniel Smith watercolors, and I'm going to start by painting the flame of Lady Liberty first. And just put a general shape up there. Grab a little more water and a lighter yellow. So I'll have two different yellows. And then for the rest, I'll use a turquoise color. Mix it with a little bit of blue and try to come up with a color that I think is going to work for Lady Liberty. She's kind of a greenish, bluish sort of color. And as long as you have the spikes on her head, she's going to look like Lady Liberty. I can promise you that. If she's holding her arm up in the air, has a book, spikes in her head, it's going to read pretty automatically as Lady Liberty. And I'm just going to sketch the color in there. You can make it solid color, and this top part I'm just going to fill it all in with color, but I'm going light. You want to try for light rather than going with heavy color because you have the option to wash it out if you need to. Grab a baby wipe and you can almost take this straight off of Bible paper. I'm not using any page prep here, just going straight from the watercolor straight onto the paper. And here I'm going to start to allow a few spots of white to show up so that I don't have solid color, but you can literally do this solid and add in some sketched lines later and be perfectly fine. But look at just that tiny bit that I've got already, she already looks like Lady Liberty. So don't stress out too much as you're painting this if you decide to make one. I'm going to give her a little square of a book and not worry about painting in a lot of detail. Just going to throw in that rectangle. And then after it's all dry, and I just put a piece of paper underneath of it just to keep myself from going over the edge too much. And then I'll start working on, while the paint is drying, I'll start working on the words. And I'm staying away from that yellow because the yellow is still wet. So I'm going to do all of the words that are the same size at the same time, because then your hand gets into a rhythm of how large those words should be. If I start doing small words and then big words, I get all kinds of off course. But here you can see that the sentiment that I'm using, or I should say sentiment, I'm a card maker, so I think in sentiments, but the words I'm using is not the full verse. It's proclaim good news as the main thing at the top. So good news is largest. And then a list of to the poor, the captives, the blind, and the oppressed. So rather than saying each one of those phrases that's in the actual verse, I can simplify it quite a bit. And then I'm going to use a kneaded eraser to wipe off the pencil lines. Now, if the watercolor is dry, you can erase the pencil lines from there. And if your watercolor looks beautiful, looks like the Lady Liberty, and you don't need to add pen lines, then go ahead and erase the pencil lines and call it done. But I felt like I wanted to add a little bit of pen detail to this one. So with my micron pen, just going around and sketching the outlines and letting it be kind of loose and not worrying about trying to make every line perfect. A few spots where I'll add a little bit of shading, but really not a whole lot. And if you want to see a little more of her detail than is on the sketch, because the sketch that I have for you in the description is a very loose one, then you might look up some pictures of Lady Liberty. I'm going to give her a head, and again, those spikes on her head are the thing that's going to communicate the most of her. Even if you just had solid shapes and you just had that spikes on her head, that would be more than enough to communicate the fact that she is Lady Liberty. She does have this little pattern in her head, and then we'll give her a little bit of a face, and then I'll add some shading to make her eyes recede just a little bit, and then underneath of her chin there's a little bit of her hair showing in the angle that I've got, but not a whole lot. And there'll be a little bit of shading maybe on a few other places around the spikes, that kind of thing. I just wanted to draw attention to it, so when I make her face darker, it's going to take more attention than, say, her arm. If her arm doesn't have a lot of shading on it, the area where it's darkest is going to get the most attention pulled to it. That, and then the detail around the words are going to be the things that will pull the eye in. For her dress, literally you can just make a bunch of folds. She does look a little tubby here just because of the angle, so she's gonna maybe need a little diet, but she's like me if so she and I will diet together. And that is just about it for this page. It is 9/11, which is a day of service, and I encourage you to go do an act of service or many acts of service. Take your children out and go do something for someone else. At the very least, go find a police officer, fireman, and thank them for their service to your community. And I will see you next Sunday. Have a wonderful week. Watch some more videos. Make sure you subscribe to my channel and have them emailed to you so you get each one in your inbox. And I'll see you next week.